Welcome to the Kingdom Man podcast, where we discuss some of the hard topics facing men with a Christian perspective. I'm your host, James Russell. Happy to be back with you. Now, in the last episode, we discussed the topic of hope and how one can have hope. What we also said is that hope is not just wishing things into being, but hope is hunting. It's putting yourself in the right position at the right time with the right things in order to accomplish what you are actually hoping for. Now, this will tie into what we are going to talk about today, because the question that I want to address is, what do you do when you don't know what to do? Have you ever considered that question? And if we're honest with ourselves, we do, but maybe not in the forefront of our minds where we actually form that for our minds to consider and think about. But there's oftentimes when we have no clear path of what we should do, that we try to figure out what happens next. And if you've been following along with us over the last almost 2 years now, you know we talked about things like having your priority list, having your values list, all those things so that we don't have to guess about what we actually value, what we actually are wanting to accomplish. And you need to have those things in place so that when you get to this point where you find yourself asking, well, now what? Now what do I do? Those things will guide you. But before we talk about what do you do, I feel like it's so much simpler to kind of tell you what you don't do. If you're in a position where you are wanting some guidance, needing some kind of idea of where do we go next, here are some things that you don't want to do. You don't want to drink alcohol. You don't want to look at porn. You don't want to cheat on your wife. You don't want to buy a new video game. And I'm sure there's many other things that we can add to the list. These are the things that kind of jumped out at me, mainly because there's no real benefit to these. Now, I know it's highly contested within the Christian world whether or not you should drink alcohol at all. I'm of the stance that alcohol does me no good. I've never seen any good things come from alcohol use, and it tastes horrible. So it's not something that I want to spend my time, energy, and money on. It gets me nowhere and tastes bad too. Now, you guys know I love nice sugary drinks. That stuff is disgusting. I don't get the allure. You may have a different opinion, and you know what? That's fine. I'm not here to try to convince you of anything. But I know that we both can agree that it doesn't really get you any closer to your goal. It's not something that should be valued. And on previous podcasts, we talked about how porn can give you a great boost in your endorphin levels. But what it actually does is damage yourself and your relationships with your wife, with your significant others. It's not good. It creates a false reality that relationships are just mere transactions about seeking our own pleasure. And when relationships become only about how you can please me, you don't really have a relationship anymore. So they damage our ability to have good, solid relationships. And it wastes time. It doesn't get you any closer to where you want to be. It makes you maybe feel good for a moment, but ultimately, it's dragging you down, not lifting you up. Same thing with cheating on your wife. It may seem really exciting in the moment. All you're doing is hurting yourself and everyone around you. They may not know it yet, but you are. Don't waste your time with that cheap fulfillment. It will ultimately leave you feeling empty. Video games. Again, it's fairly self-explanatory. I'm not against video games. I enjoy a good video game from time to time. However, it is a waste of time. When you are finding yourself in the position of needing to know, what do I do when I don't know what to do? Video games is not going to be the answer to that question. Now, if you have nothing but time to waste in order to get to your next step, okay, I'm fine with that, but it is not the next step. It will not be the next step to where you're ultimately wanting to go. It will not get you there. It is simply a time waster. And the one thing that we have to protect, the one thing that we will never get back, is our time. Men, we need to spend it wisely. If you would take that same amount of time and invest it in your relationship with your wife, with your children, with your family, you may not get that instant endorphin high. You may not get all that instant feeling, but you will get it for the long term. And it is getting you where you want to be if your values are as a kingdom man's values should be. So what do you do when you don't know what to do then? You look back at your list of values. You look at your goals, what you want to achieve, and then take one small step in that direction. And then take another and another. It may not be a big step. It may be a fairly large step like moving. I know there's a lot of questioning going on, especially in the minds of men, when they find themselves living in areas where that particular area no longer really supports the values that they hold. So what do you do? Do you stay and try to change that culture? Or do you move your family to be in the place that actually supports the kind of man that you say you are? The kind of place that you want to raise a family? Or do you stick around? I can't tell you what you should do, but I can tell you, take a small step. Maybe update your resume and just put it on the web and see if anything comes from that. You don't have to make a decision to move, but you're at least maybe seeing if there's something that might be available, something that you may not even consider that may be looking for you. If you don't like the shape of the community that you're in, but you don't want to move either, join the city council. Run for office. Make your voice heard. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be crazy vocal all the time so that your friends and family are sick of even seeing posts on you on Facebook or Twitter or X or whatever they're calling it these days, or Instagram. You don't have to become overbearing, but that doesn't mean your voice shouldn't be heard either. Now, this is just one scenario. And there's a lot of little steps that you can take to get you closer to where you want to be. Even though you don't necessarily know what the next step is, you know what you value. You know what you're about. And your job is to make more of you in this world. Here at Kingdom Man, we say that we have three purposes. It's to give, to guard, and to guide. We should be giving more than what we're taking from this world. We should leave a legacy behind us because of our giving. And we should look out for the interest of not just ourselves, but of our loved ones, to make sure that they are heading on the right track. And if we can offer some advice, we can guide them to where they need to be. There are plenty of young men out there who have no man to guide them, who are just trying to figure out this world all on their own. And maybe you were there once too. If you get to a place where you don't know what to do, then help someone else get to where they need to be. And you may find that that was more fulfilling than anything else you could have come up with on your own. Never would have imagined that being a mentor is actually so fulfilling and will open doors that you never knew would open just because you're willing to invest in someone else. So what do you do when you don't know what to do? I don't know what you do. But as a kingdom man, I'm not going to waste my time. I'm not going to look for cheap thrills. I'm going to go back to the core of my being, what I value, and then make investments in those things for myself and for my community, for my family, for my loved ones. You ultimately already know what you're supposed to be doing. You may not know exactly what the picture's going to look like. You know what you're about. Now be about it.